This is a good time to tell you that the primary psychosis appears in the whole gradation of the severity, from the weakest through more and more intense to the extremely strong. And it is the latter that guarantees the dominance over the peers and the greatest attractiveness in their eyes already in the childhood. In other words, children are the most impressed by their friends, but those of their friends which have the primary psychosis in the extreme severity. And this despite the fact that some of the children presenting such an extreme severity of psychosis have considerable conflicts with their children and with their caregivers. The evocative theatricality of the people with the external self-esteem makes them strive to be always in the center of attention at all costs, including the price of breaking the rules of social conduct. And being the center of attention has something magical about it for the simplest reason: it attracts attention. And this attention can be used in various ways. The goal is to win the sympathy of all observers. And this is what the external self-esteem theater is about. It's about seducing and enchanting the environment. If you do it constantly, since the early childhood, you can master this art. And if we become master in any art, then the attention of the environment focuses on us more or less, rather more. So much that we become liked, admired, and desired. For this reason, both in kindergarten and later in the following life stages up to the late maturity, people with the exuberant, theatrical, external self-esteem use in every possible way the sympathy they evoke in their environment. And the seduced and charmed environment will gladly give them all possible privileges and resources, such as the power, the wealth, and worship at the forefront. No wonder then that having tasted the pleasures of life with the primary psychosis, so much as 75 to 90% of us will stay with it for the rest of life. One doesn't change a mechanism that works perfectly. Of course, no one makes an informed decision to get out of or to be in the primary psychosis. Whether it happens anyway during the adolescence or later or not is only the result of many years of the formation of a child's psyche. The psyche, which during the childhood did not have the opportunity and the need to test an alternative anxiolytic tool than the primary psychosis, will obviously continue to function in the same way after the adolescence. But here is the question. When can the child psyche test other anxiolytic solutions, since, as I have repeated many times, the primary psychosis protects sufficiently the psyche from the anxiety? It's possible that some of you noticed the collapse of my theory of the psyche at this point. So let us see whether my theory has really ended here. Indeed, it's a difficult moment for my theory of the psyche because it seems to be an irrefutable contradiction. How can a child acquire and improve the anti-anxiety tools and thus increase the anxiety emotional intelligence if it's protected from the anxiety by the primary psychosis until adolescence? This is why this psychosis appeared millions of years ago and is written in the genes to protect against anxiety. Thus, the child's consciousness has no contact with the stimuli coming from the anxiety pole because their reception is blocked by the primary psychosis. Since these stimuli do not reach the consciousness, the child's psyche cannot know what the anxiety is, and if so, it cannot and does not have to deal with it. Yes, the child knows what the fear is. That's the reaction of mobilization, nervous tension, and fleeing to a safe place away from a visible threat. But the child doesn't know yet what the anxiety is. That's the same reaction of mobilization, nervous tension, and escape, but against an invisible, abstract threat. Of course, the fact that the child for a long time of the childhood does not understand and does not feel the anxiety does not mean yet that this anxiety is not there. The anxiety is there all the time, starting with the fetal life already as soon as the central nervous system with the brain is formed. But this anxiety is not perceived by the child thanks to the transmission block by the primary psychosis between the anxiety pole of the psyche and the child's developing consciousness. So let's once again rethink the critical for my theory question. How a child is supposed to develop his anxiolytic tools if he is not in conflict, if he is not in contact with the anxiety? How? And yet, it's possible. First, the child has an access to the experience of the fear. The primary psychosis never protects against the fear, but the fear is a twin of the anxiety, although the anxiety is not fear, as I have explained many times. Already in the prenatal life, when we feel the anxiety, we experience exactly the same mental process in our psyche as the fear, a nervous tension and mobilization to escape from a real threat. The only thing that distinguishes the fear from the anxiety is the cause that initiates this process and the length of its duration. So let's call this process with one name as the anxiety-fear process. In the case of the fear, the cause of the anxiety-fear process is a sudden appearance of an object understood as a threat. And the anxiety-fear process continues either until we become familiar with the threatening object, and as a result, it ceases to be perceived as such, or until it's distant in time and space. In the case of the anxiety-fear process has no cause, and it cannot have it because it's a process that takes place constantly while we are awake. So the anxiety-fear process is identical in both cases. It's the same process. Actually, the anxiety is like having an infinite number of the fears, one after the other, and for no reason whatsoever. From here, it's clear that the child can gather and master the anxiolytic tools by interacting with the fear. That's first. Second, the child learns over time to understand the anxiety conceptually, although as long as the children are protected by the primary psychosis, they will not feel this anxiety mentally. They will learn the anxiety and how to deal with it from the people around them. Thank you.